Well, hello everyone. This is Dana Hilton for the Playing It Safe blog on firehouse.com. And I have some very special guests with me this evening. I have Raymond Nance from the State Fire Marshal's office in Nebraska, as well as my friend Melanie and Ray's good friend, Deputy Dan. And we are so excited to be here this evening, aren't we?
Oh, we sure are.
Ray has a very, very wonderful program in the state of Nebraska, and we wanted to visit with him a little bit more about the program and share some tips with the educators out there, if you would. But first, let's start off with telling the folks out there a little bit more about yourself.
Well, Dana, I've been in the fire service now since 1975. I've always had an interest in helping people and helping them learn to do things safely and helping them learn to protect themselves. And here, 10 years ago, I got into a position where I was able to actually do fire prevention activities with the Fire Marshal's office.
Nice.
But that wasn't where I began at. I began when I was actually a child playing with puppets at home and working with children when I was about 16 years old in boys groups, and have actually served as a captain on a small volunteer fire department teaching fire prevention at the local level as well.
That's wonderful. So hopefully you can also share some tips with those that are at the local level and may also be limited by those budget cuts that they may have as we go along this evening.
Okay.
So tell us, now that you told us about yourself, tell us about Deputy Dan and how you utilize him in your program.
Well, as I said, I started a number of years ago kind of playing with paper puppets and folding paper and making puppets out of them. And I really enjoyed that. And I always had a dream someday to have a ventriloquist dummy, a puppet like Deputy Dan. But I never saw that happening. And I kind of migrated my way up to hand puppets, and then I began working with the soft body puppets, similar to Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that each puppet has its own unique and distinct things that it can do, different ways that it can be used, and it's a fairly cheap and inexpensive way to actually get out fire safety messages. But Dan was the culmination of finally making it come true. And some of the things with Dan, his boots were actually donated.
Nice.
A boy and one of our ladies at my work had her son had outgrown the boots. She donated the pants. The belt was actually one of my belts.
Nice.
You're probably thinking, that.
Melanie's jealous. She has no shoes.
Oh.
Aw.
I'm sorry, Melanie. But we put the uniform together. Now, you look at my size and look at Deputy Dan's size here.
Yes.
And my wife was actually able to take two of my uniform shirts and take a 2T pattern, which T is for toddler.
Right,
and so you can take a toddler's pattern, a size 2T with a ventriloquist dummy, and you can actually form it, shape it, and make it into the uniform that you want it to have to represent your department, because the ventriloquist dummy comes with clothes, but not what you would normally use.
If you don't mind, show the camera a little bit about the shirt that he has and the patches, because they're wonderful how you fixed his uniform up.
The shirt is actually, instead of having a button, it's got Velcro at the top, but it's detailed down to the point that it has the actual zipper in the shirt.
Nice.
The badge that was used on here is actually a hat badge for a uniform dress hat, but it didn't come with the post back on it, with the screw-on back.
Yeah.
And so we were able to utilize it because it had two clutch backs on the back of it to actually make it stick. And then for the collar emblems, we're actually just using state seals, and you could use a fire department pin up there as well for your department. And then we had a Name That Dummy contest with all of our state agency people, and we came up with the name Deputy Dan, the man with a plan.
The man with the plan. It's good to have a plan, isn't it, Melanie? Yes.
And then we've added just a couple of other items to it. We've got a Smoky Bear pin here, because as we all know, not all fires happen indoors.
Right.
We have outdoor fires as well.
Right.
And then we have our Sparky the Fire Dog from NFPA.
Nice.
On his uniform. So just a couple of items that are added there.
That's very, very nice. Now, how much does Dan weigh?
Dan is probably about 7.5 to 10 pounds.
Does he get heavy after a while?
He does if you're carrying him around.
Like at events and that sort of thing?
A lot of times I'll just set him on my hand and he rides on my hand and I can carry him that way. But if I want to walk with him and give him a action like he's actually walking, then I'm actually holding him in one hand and letting him go up and down a little bit so it gives him more lifelike characteristic
Nice.
as we, traverse from one place to another.
Right. And one thing about puppets that we might share with folks out there is that it's important to make sure that they always are doing something. They always have a little action. They're not just sitting there like a bump on a log.
Right. If your puppet sits totally still and doesn't move at all, then it gives the illusion, they're actually not alive, but we want them to appear to be alive.
Right.
And the only way that we can do that is if we do keep moving them around.
Right. And now is he made out of plastic or wood, or what is he actually made out of, the material?
The original puppets were carved, but I think this one is actually kind of a cast because they're, mass producing them.
Yeah.
And so I would say that he's probably an acrylic type of material that's been cast.
Okay, so let's say you're a fire department and you don't have a whole lot of money. What is the lower end cost of one like this?
You're talking somewhere between $250 probably up to $500 for a top end, around $500 for a top end ventriloquist dummy. The lower end would not have the moving eyes, which Deputy Dan can look left or right. And if we were to look inside the back of
Let's
Dan,
go ahead and show, kind of aim it
if we look at the back here of Dan, there's actually a post in the back which allows me to turn the head. There are also what we call triggers in the back, and with my right hand, if I pull down on this trigger on the front, his mouth is opening. When I release that trigger, the mouth closes. So that's the trigger for the mouth, and then the other one, depending on whether I move it up or move it down on the other side, that trigger is for the eyes to move them left to right. So a basic puppet would not have the second trigger in it.
Right.
But it still would have, so it wouldn't be able to look at you or do something like, one of our openings would be something like, "Hi, I'm Dan. Have you met the dummy?" And it takes away from, having the moving eyes really adds to being able to get him to look in the direction you want to, or to single out somebody in a group. You can actually get him to look in their direction, and you can say, "Why don't you tell me what you think?"
Yes, yes. So how do the kids react to him?
They perceive it very well. Now, I'm not perfect with my ventriloquist voice. My lips do move.
And I was going to ask you about it. You don't have to be an expert at ventriloquism
you don't.
either.
Most people are looking, when the puppet begins to move and begins to come alive, they're watching the puppet, they're not watching the speaker most of the time.
Right, right. So I would imagine too, besides children, other age groups as well can really relate to him. Maybe the older folks, do they really enjoy?
I've actually taken him out to adult groups, and I've talked to adult groups as well as working with high school students, junior high, and elementary. But my primary is probably preschool up through first grade is where I do most of my work with him.
Right. He's very, very, I would think would be a great way to help reinforce the fire safety message, and something that's really innovative too, because you're the first person that I've heard of that has used now tell me what you call him again, a ventriloquist dummy, is that right?
Yes, he's considered a puppet, but there are various types of puppets. There's the hand puppet, which is basically like the sock that goes over your hand, and
Yes,
just
sock
a
puppets.
short one. Then you've got the full body puppets, or soft body puppets, similar to Melanie. Deputy Dan would be probably your next step up, and your next step up would be the ventriloquist dummy. And then there's the ones you see that, like the national NFL football teams or whatever have out there.
The mascots?
That people get into, the mascots. Those are actually considered puppets. Those are called a full body puppet.
Oh, okay.
And so those are a puppet as well, and some fire departments use those, but they're a lot more expensive.
They're a lot more expensive, and you have to have somebody that's willing to put on that costume all the time. And sometimes, I don't know about you, and I don't know about our viewers out there, but in Arkansas, it tends to get a little warm, and sometimes those are a little bit more difficult. And they're not quite as easy to transport as something such as this. I know that we both came to this location on a plane, and I believe Deputy Dan, were you in a suitcase, or did you get to ride on the plane with Ray? How did that happen?
Well, if you can picture it, I sat in a suitcase with my feet stuck up beside my ears and my hands laid down at my side and my boots stuffed in my backside, and that was not fun.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. But then you got to then you got to come out for a while and actually breathe the fresh air, and you were happy, right? You're giving me that look.
Yeah, it was really nice to get some fresh air. I mean, they stuck me. The first plane we flew on, I had to sit in the luggage compartment, and I had no company to visit with.
Aww.
And then they ran me through that screener, and I'm surprised the guy didn't try to check and find out what the body was that was inside the baggage.
Well, I know Melanie traveled with me, and I here, close your ears. Melanie traveled actually on the plane with me, and we had so much fun sharing the fire safety message with the passengers in the airport. The screeners, when you go through security, and they're kind of sometimes tend to be a little bit grumpy, but when they saw Melanie coming, they instantly got a smile on their face, and people in security were like, well, this is a first. But we were actually able to share the fire safety message all the way to our destination, and it was a load of fun. And Melanie got to ride on a plane for the first time, which was kind of fun too, wasn't it? I don't know who had more fun, Melanie or myself, but it's a great way to travel. They're, like I said, they're a little bit more portable than the costumes that you will actually that you wear. So they're nicer to be able to take to different locations.
They're a good icebreaker too.
They are.
Yes, I've had instances where I've been at health fairs, and I was there to educate the public about fire prevention, and I was standing near the blood draw line where people were actually getting their blood drawn. They were waiting in line for that, and they would see the fire safety stuff that you wanted to show them, and they purposely look away and turn their back. And so I went out to my vehicle and got Deputy Dan out of the vehicle, brought him in, and got people to talking, and got them to laughing, and got them to participate, and was actually able then to educate, and Deputy Dan was the icebreaker to make that happen.
I so am with you there, because that, like I said, that's what we did on that entire trip, and we were able to visit with folks about fire safety that probably never would have really wanted to listen or just had that on their mind. But when we were traveling, I had a ball teaching fire safety, so it is a way to, like you say, break the ice and share the message, I think, in a really, really unique way. And definitely what you're doing is very, very unique, and I'm trying to contain myself from wanting to get a girl like you, like Deputy Dan, getting a female, and trying that out. And now you've done some work with other type of puppets as well, you said?
Yes, I have. I've done some work with puppets like Melanie, and there are some things that are unique to the way that they're made that you can do with them that you can't do with Dan.
For instance?
For instance, you can use a puppet like Melanie to teach kids how to roll out of bed, how not to sit up in bed, how to crawl, how to check a door because of the wire that's on the arm.
Right.
On her left arm. It's conducive to allowing you to actually use that to move the hand, feel the door with it, And if you're using a simulator trailer, you can actually have them crawl to the window, and having a firefighter outside to help you, they can be passed outside the trailer window to the firefighter then to help them down. And so the
Nice.
smaller children can be taught in a way that is both fun and entertaining and still yet giving a message.
Right, still educational, and that's another important part too, and I'm sure that we have the same beliefs as well as a lot of educators out there, that these are puppets and like for instance dogs that I utilize in my program. These are tools and ways to help reinforce the fire safety message. This isn't a way that you would want it to necessarily be your main focal point, but you would perhaps want to utilize them to help enhance it, because what you're saying is, are you following with what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah.
That it's not just all about fun. It is fun, but you want to make it educationally sound as well.
Children, adults, people are going to learn more if they're having fun while they're getting the message.
Right.
And if they're not having fun and they're sitting out there and they're bored to death hearing you spout statistics and things that are going on, you're going to lose your audience. You're not going to get the message across to them. So you have to have fun as well as the audience having fun.
So is there anything that you would like to do as an educator with Deputy Dan, and not necessarily with Deputy Dan, but things that you would like to do in the future that you haven't tried yet? Puppet related. Is there anything that, he's giving me that look again, like, no, you don't want to try anything else. Is there anything that you've always wanted to try that you haven't yet?
Well, I think a lot of the things that I have done with Deputy Dan and some of the things that I've continued to use have been off the cuff.
Uh-huh.
And so, not that I've really gone out looking for them, but I've experimented and I found out that some things work and some things don't.
Some don't.
And some of those items, you can probably notice that he's got a little bit of an owie on his nose.
I noticed that. Where did he get that boo-boo?
Well, actually, it becomes an educational point. Normally, he has a booster seat in the pickup that I drive,
Mm-hmm.
and he's seat belted in.
Right.
And here, about 8 months ago, I had somebody else riding in the vehicle with me, and so I had taken him out of his seat belt. I had removed the booster seat, and he was sitting on the armrest between the two of us, and I had to tap my brakes. And when I tapped my brakes, obviously he was not in the seat belt, and he went flying, and he got his nose banged up. And so it's a good teaching point when the kids say, what happened to his nose, that you can actually use that as a teachable moment and tell them, you know, you need to wear your seatbelts because look what happened to Deputy Dan.
Right. Right. So if you don't mind, just share a little bit of what you do with Deputy Dan, and share with everybody how you utilize him. What special things that you do.
Well, as you saw earlier, I kind of, we have the little routine that we go through about, have you met the dummy, and we kind of talk about that, and that gets the kids to laughing because he's calling me a dummy,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're talking about things that are going on. But then we'll get into something like, did you kids know you were going to be taking a test today? And of course, you normally get the response, no, and said, yeah, you're going to be taking a vocabulary test. Now remember, I'm working with preschoolers, first graders, and kindergartners.
And they can't even spell in the first
and
one.
most of them have no idea what vocabulary is to start off with.
It's a big word.
So we explain to them a little bit the vocabulary. It simply is word meanings and definitions. And then the primary thing I want to get across to that age group, not that I don't do other things, but the primary thing is I want them to understand that matches and lighters are tools for adults and not toys for children.
Right.
And so we help them to, all kids know what a toy is.
Mm-hmm.
So we say, can anybody tell me what a toy is? Well, yeah, that's something, you play with.
Melanie knows.
What is a toy, Melanie?
A toy is something that boys and girls can play with.
And what's a tool?
A tool is for grown-ups, not for children. I'm not used to using my left hand. I'm sorry. Are you having trouble talking? Yes.
So, once we've established the ground rules of that toys are something you play
Right.
with, and tools are something that adults work with.
Right.
Then we're able to go ahead and transition into playing a game, and a lot of the fire departments have probably used the simple teaching tool of the game called Tools or Toys, where
Right.
you take a bag or a box and do a mixture of tools and toys along with matches and lighters to use the teachable moments to help children understand that matches and lighters are
That's
tools
right.
for adults.
And by the way, that is, if you don't mind me interjecting here, that is a great way, if you don't have a lot of money, is to just pick up a simple bag and fill it with a ball or and it's inexpensive. You don't have to go buy a lot of special equipment to
That's
be able
correct.
to do that. So anyway, go ahead.
But I utilize the fire department, and the fire department speaking will actually, or the teacher with the class will actually pull the tools or toys out of the bag,
Mm-hmm.
and then the puppet, it actually becomes a three-way conversation or more, because you've got the kids responding, you've got the firefighter talking to them about what they're pulling out of the bag,
Right.
and then Deputy Dan is making wisecracks as things are going through. For example, one of the items I have in my bag is a chisel.
Mm-hmm.
And the chisel gets pulled out of the bag, and of course the children are supposed to say tool or toy, whichever is correct. And they always say tool, they get it correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tool. And Dan says something like, well, you know what you use that for, don't you? That's how those firefighters keep those chiseled bodies. And the kids usually laugh at it. They think that's pretty funny. We have a few others, such as the wood mallet that sometimes comes out.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to hit anybody with that, are you? And of course the firefighter may say, well, I don't know, or whatever they say. Then his comeback is usually something like, I hope not, it's too early in the day to get hammered. So we're able to actually outreach to adults and get the adults to laugh,
Right.
because the adults know what we're saying.
They're getting it.
They're getting a message, even though it's over the children's head.
Right, right.
And so we're able to, involve the adults have fun, and still yet get a message out to the children about not playing with matches and lighters, because they're tools for toys, not
Right.
tools for adults, not toys for kids. Excuse me.
Right. Well, that sounds like just a wonderful way to help with your program. Is there anything else that you do? Do you take them to safety fairs and events
He
and
goes
that sort of thing?
right. A lot of times, if we're at a safety fair or an event, sometimes you have people, you have problems getting them to your site.
Right.
And so I'll leave other staff at the site to man the site, and I'll go out and actually start going through the crowds. I've gone through crowds at carnivals, I've gone through other crowds, and just tell them where things are happening, what's happening, and talking to them, and actually take a message to them
Mm-hmm.
if, in the event that they don't go to where we've got other messages for
Right.
them.
You've at
At
least
least they're
shared.
getting something,
Right.
and so the puppet becomes an ideal way to do that.
That's a great way to do that. And what are some, let's share a final thought with everybody out there. If you had to give a piece of advice for somebody that's just wanting to get started, maybe with a ventriloquist dummy or with a soft puppet or whatever they want to do, what would do you think the most important advice would be? If you had to give one tip, what would it be?
Well, I think when you're working with a puppet, number one, you need to keep eye contact with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose the eye contact and the puppet becomes inanimate and dead totally, then you're going to lose them. You've lost them. But the other item is you need to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing something, when you first start out, spend some time in front of a mirror, look in the mirror, allow your puppet to become you, and mimic your mouth movements.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, when you talk, your hand and eye coordination are going to be simultaneous. You're going to actually
Right.
build that in
Right,
there.
right. So that's a great piece of advice, and maybe we should let Melanie and Deputy Dan say a couple of things before we go. What do you think?
Would you like him to sing one of the songs that he sings?
Sure. Would you like that, Melanie? Oh yeah, she'd like that too.
Are you ready, Dan? Yeah, I
Let's
guess
get 'em a little
so.
bit closer this way. There we go.
Any fool who plays with matches doesn't comprehend that matches aren't playthings, so he gets burned in the end.
I'm sure that gets the children's attention.
That definitely gets the children's attention. Usually they jump, but they laugh, and they know that, you know, matches are something that are dangerous, and they can get hurt by them. And,
Right.
so it's a way that Deputy Dan can get that message out in a fun way.
That's awesome. And I think, high five, Deputy Dan. High five. Awesome. We really, really appreciate you visiting with everybody on the Playing It Safe blog. And if you don't mind sharing your contact information, how can folks get in touch with you? Or maybe they want to get in touch with Deputy Dan. How would they go about getting in touch with you?
Well, if somebody needs to reach me and they're wanting more tips or ideas of how the Deputy Dan does work out there, they can contact my email at ray.nance@nebraska.gov.
You want to give that one more time?
Yes, it's ray.nance@nebraska.gov.
That is awesome. And we appreciate you coming, Deputy Dan. Thank you so much for being a guest on our program. We really, really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed being here.
Well, you're just a pleasure to be around. And Melanie enjoyed having you too here to join us. I know she loves helping us with our fire safety programming as well, and she really, really appreciates all that you do. And you too, Ray.
Yeah, the dummy is, I guess he is somewhat important.
Well, thank you so much again for visiting with us. And until next time, this is Dana Hilton. Stay safe. Goodbye. Goodbye.